Good evening and welcome to Politics Nation. Tonight's lead, despite withering pressure from his own party and even the Trump administration to resign, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam has said to his constituents, "Don't believe your lying eyes." Because in the past 24 hours, Northam has apologized for a racist photo on his medical school yearbook page depicting people in Ku Klux Klan robes and blackface, only to come out today with the triangulation that none of the people in the photo were him, and as such, no resignation is necessary. He stuck to that version at a press conference earlier today.
I believe then and now that I am not either of the people in that photo. I cannot in good conscience choose the path that would be easier for me in an effort to duck my responsibility to reconcile. I intend to continue doing the business of Virginia.
Folks, if you follow me on this show, you know what side I come down on. It goes without saying that Northam should resign, and you'll hear that from me tonight. But I want to add that even if he is ousted by internal pressure, it won't excuse the Democratic Party's blind spots on racism or absolve the Republican Party for ignoring it within their own ranks. As I sat and watched Governor Northam's press conference, hoping he would resign, because whether you want to deal with whether or not he was in the photo or not, it really makes no difference. It was on his yearbook page, and it is hard for me to believe, despite his claims, he never saw his yearbook in 30 years. But then he came with a excuse, a admission, that really drove the nail through the wood for me. He said, "I didn't do blackface on that picture, but I did do blackface." Listen.
That same year, I did participate in a dance contest in San Antonio, in which I darkened my face as part of a Michael Jackson costume. I look back now and regret that I did not understand the harmful legacy of an action like that.
So I will not resign from being governor because I was not in blackface on my yearbook, even though it was my page, my yearbook. But the same year, 1984, when I was 25 years old, I, in a dance contest, dressed up like Michael Jackson, but found it all right for me to do blackface as Michael Jackson. Same year as the yearbook. Now, 1984, I became the community affairs director for Michael Jackson's Victory Tour, his concert tour all over the country, at his request. I saw thousands, tens of thousands of young white kids dressed like Michael, wear the glove, wear the high pants at the end of their, showing their socks and doing the moonwalk like Michael. None of them wore blackface. It takes a mentality to add blackface to a Michael Jackson costume. The same mentality that you would stand with a Ku Klux Klan robed person or wear blackface yourself or have it on your yearbook page. He also admitted that his nickname for some when school was Coon Man. Now, maybe if he didn't put the picture on his page, maybe people that would call you Coon Man felt it's appropriate for you to be remembered that way. Because after all, yearbooks are your statement going into how your life is going to be as you prepare to go on with your life. Governor, you should resign. And as I said earlier, since you brought up Michael Jackson, I repeat, you should listen to a Michael Jackson song in the governor's mansion tonight and start packing and beat it. Let's bring in Democratic Virginia Delegate Lamont Bagby, head of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, Democratic strategist and Virginia native Atima Amara, and who worked on Northam's gubernatorial campaign, and Tim Wise, author and anti-racism activists. Let me go to you first, Delegate. The Black Caucus of Virginia has called on the governor's resignation. Has that changed since his press conference this afternoon?
No, Rev, it has not changed. And actually, we put out another press release, again, calling upon the governor to resign. We had one meeting with the governor yesterday in which about 10 of my members walked over to the governor's office and met with him to talk about our concerns and talk to him directly, face to face. My members deserve the opportunity to talk to him face to face and express their outrage and concern and displeasure of what had been revealed. Just on the House floor yesterday, Rev, I made a speech, and it's something that you are probably very familiar with, and that is the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus has no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests.
Now,
I made that.
Now, let me ask you this, Delegate Bagby, and you're right, I am familiar with that line and your work as well. But let me ask you, for the good of the state, the good of the party, the good of the country, because we have to be consistent. If we're going to call out people in the Republican Party or on the right, you can't excuse. I mean, the Ku Klux Klan robe and hood is a terrorist symbol. We're not talking about somebody talking street talk here or locker room talk. We're talking about symbols of terrorism. That's what that KKK robe means. We're talking about defacing us and demoralizing us. As you watched him today, I mean, it doesn't even seem like he understands the gravity of what this represents.
And that's alarming. Again, yesterday we were having a conversation solely about the picture, and then later on we found about Coon Man. Today, as he shared additional information with Virginia, that there also is blackface Michael Jackson pictures out there somewhere, it illustrates, as he explained it, that he doesn't understand the gravity of it. And even when he said he put a little bit of shoe polish on his face because shoe polish is hard to get off.
Now, Atima, you worked on his campaign. At any point in his campaign, did you ever hear him say what he said today? Well, there were things in the state and in the school that he went to that were wrong and racist, and he had to grow out of. I mean, because you must remember 1984 when he did this. He was not a child. He was 25 years old, going to medical school. And this was the year Michael Jackson was the biggest star in the world, the first black to really go as crossover big as he did. Bill Cosby had the hottest show on television. Jesse Jackson ran for president and got hundreds of thousands of votes in Virginia, millions of votes nationwide. There was a white cultural backlash to all of this. I saw a lot of whites that were upset their kids wanted to imitate Michael Jackson. So in that kind of climate is when he behaved like this. Did he ever refer to it then while he was campaigning for governor where he got 87% of the black vote in Virginia?
Well, thank you, Reverend, for having me. I have volunteered on his campaign. I was a fundraiser, volunteer fundraiser, a surrogate. I got to know him very well because I was also, I'm a state party steering member, so I didn't work as paid staff on his campaign. So no, none of this, though, from someone who was a surrogate for his campaign in some regards and helping out, came out in any way, shape, or form. And that's what's been so hard about this last 24 hours, right? For a lot of local black electeds, activists, folks who are running for office now, and sort of as Delegate Bagby has said, is that, you know, what this is just unbelievable, right? And he gave comments yesterday that said it was him. And then, but this morning, all of a sudden, it changed. And he's like, well, it's not me. But I was in blackface in another photo, potentially, that he won't say is the case, in that same time frame in 1984. At this point, he's eroded the trust of so many of us who have worked with him, have supported him. It's quite heartbreaking because I know so many African Americans in Virginia of different generations, certainly of a younger generation, who've been elevated by him in politics, who've been mentored by him, who serve in his administration currently. I think of what they're going through right now. And this is, you know, for him to say, I'm going to have a discussion, I'm going to have a reconciliation tour, you know, around the state of Virginia, and they're going to listen. Nobody has time for him to understand the implications of blackface.
Well, not while he sits as governing the state. But let me stop you right there, because this is just in. There's a new photo we want to show you. This is from the Virginian Pilot newspaper. It allegedly one more photo of men in blackface from 1984 EVMS yearbook. But we want to make it clear this is not Governor Northam. So these Tim Weiss photos of men in blackface was all through his yearbook, a yearbook that he says he gave photos to, and he claimed he never got the yearbook, he never looked at it in 30 years. I don't know why you give photos to your yearbook and you're not interested enough to come back. But this was all throughout his yearbook. He never mentioned this, never talked about the racism of the school he went to, and clearly never talked about how it was on his page in the yearbook. But now today he reveals, but I did put blackface on to do the Michael Jackson, even though I don't know anyone else that did that and then became governor of a state.
Right. Well, the line from Scripture is go and sin no more, the operative word being go. One can certainly be rehabilitated and change, but when you have done this, and you had to have known at the very least about the Michael Jackson incident, and only bring it up because you're afraid of a possible photo being released, what you're saying is what you alluded to a second ago. He doesn't have a deep appreciation for the hurt and the pain that this causes the black Virginians without whose votes he could not have won. And the thing that disturbs me the most about this is that white Virginians and white Americans are not outraged enough in demanding his resignation. And I mean by that white Democrats and some liberal folks who I keep hearing saying things like on liberal websites, well, remember, it's Virginia. I mean, you know, they were raised with these images. I'm a Southerner. My family had been in the South for literally hundreds of years. My mother was clear enough with me growing up that black caricatures were so offensive that not only would blackface not have been allowed, little black Sambo was not allowed in my home. And I was, 2 or 3 years old in the early 1970s. So being Southern is not an excuse. Being white is not an excuse. Being a white male Southerner is not an excuse. We should demand better of our people as allies in solidarity with people of color.
Let me go back to you, Delegate Bagby, before we have to go, because it is very true what Tim is saying, and add that we really can't excuse it. And this is where Charlottesville happened. And now he's going to be the governor of a state that we mark this year as the 400th anniversary of where enslaved blacks were first brought to this country in 1619. He's going to be the governor to preside over this. What will happen, what can happen in the House of Delegates if he does not resign? Will there be moves to remove him?
Well, I can tell you this, and just to go back to something I heard earlier, I want to be clear that the Virginia Democratic House Caucus, the Democratic Caucus, the Virginia Senate Democratic Caucus, all have called for his resignation.
Yeah. And many Democratic presidential candidates as well.
Good.
Yeah,
and so of Virginia.
So, I mean, and just about every organization that contributed to the Democratic Party has called for his resignation. There's no opportunity for him to continue to serve. If, in fact, he decides to continue to fight the resignation, I don't think he has any way of fighting back on a vote by both chambers, the House and the Senate. The other way that he will be removed is the Attorney General, the President of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House can also decide to remove him.
So there, in your judgment, will be a move to remove him whether he resigns willingly or not?
I don't see another way.
All right, I'm going to have to hold it there. Thank you, Lamont Bagby. Thank you, Atima Amara and Tim Weiss. Coming up, I'll ask a former Democrat.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.